we are going to discuss the various cells of the nervous system. Now, when I say nervous system, you probably automatically think of a neuron, and a neuron is the big communication nerve, or cell, I should say, in the nervous system. However, there are far more cells. There are supporting cells, and these supporting cells are typically referred to as glial cells or neuroglia. There are 5 different types. And this illustration shows you. Of these 5, 4 of them are going to be found in the central nervous system, and 1 is going to be found in the peripheral nervous system. So, who is found in the peripheral nervous system? That's going to be this guy, the Schwann cell. The rest of them, oligodendrocyte, microglial cell, epididymal cell, and astrocyte, these 4 are going to be part of the central nervous system. So, what does the astrocyte do for the nervous system? First of all, it is the most abundant of the 5 glial cells. It has a star shape to it, hence its name, astro, Latin for star. And its projections that radiate off of the cell body are going to connect to capillaries and neurons alike. This means the astrocyte is going to both provide support and enable exchanges between the capillaries and the neurons. Without the astrocytes, they are not the neurons of the brain and central nervous system or spinal cord are not going to be able to get the oxygen and glucose that they need in order to do what they need to do. They're also not going to be able to get rid of CO2 and other waste products. So these astrocytes are critical for neuron survival. What we have learned from studying is that aspect. However, in our research, we have also discovered that, and we don't know exactly how or why, but the astrocytes also appear to act as an antigen presenting cell as well. So they do appear to be a part of the immune response as well. Further research is being done on that. There are more details that we need to discover on how and why, but it is something that we have noticed. And actually, I probably should have mentioned this earlier. This is a good time to. There are many, many things about the nervous system, the brain especially, that we see exist. We can identify it, we can observe it, we might even be able to measure it, but we haven't necessarily figured out what is controlling it and why. And so, not as much in this class, but in physiology, you'll see in the book and in the PowerPoints and stuff that your professors give you, we know this thing is, but we don't know why. We see this thing, but we don't know why. And it's not due to lack of knowledge on your professor's part, it's because scientifically we can see it, we haven't figured out the control mechanism yet. So anyway, back to astrocytes. Astrocytes are going to control the chemical environment around the neurons. This, in turn, is going to aid in the creation of action potentials, which is going to allow the nerve to do its communication bit. Microglia are small ovoid cells with long, thorny type processes. Think more like a rose stem. And these guys are definitively part of the immune response for the nervous system. They assess for damage, and when they find it, they phagocytize or eat the debris and damaged cells. They clean up the area. Epididymal cells. Epididymal cells are going to be, think of them as a barrier cell. They're going to range in shape and size from being more flat pancake-like to more like the columns. They're typically going to be ciliated, and they're going to line the cavities in and around the brain and spinal cord. What's the purpose of that cilia? That cilia is going to beat to circulate CSF. I will talk about CSF in a little bit. But CSF is critical, and circulation of that CSF is critical for a healthy functioning brain and spinal cord. So if these cilia stop beating, we're going to start running into problems. Oligodendrocytes. Oligodendrocytes have some branches. They line up along the thick cells of the central nervous system and wrap their extensions around the neural fibers, specifically around the axon of the neuron. We will get to that guy in just a second, but they're going to wrap around the axon, and when they wrap around the axon, they're going to produce a insulating covering that is called myelin sheath. These myelin sheaths, think of them, take a look at an electrical cord, and that rubber coating around the electrical cord that protects both the cord and us. That is what these myelin sheaths do. They aid in the transmission of the electrical signals, speeding them up and protecting the axon or the electrical cord. So these guys are going to be protective coverings for the central nervous system. Protective nervous system. In the peripheral nervous system, we do actually have something that's called a satellite cell. It's a variation on the glial or microglia and astrocytes. They're not typically included in that 5-cell count that I mentioned, but they do need to be mentioned here. Why aren't they typically included? Because we're still working on what they do. So, satellite cells tend to be flat cells that surround the nerves of the peripheral nervous system, kind of like the astrocytes and microglia do around the central nervous system. We think they provide support and control the chemical environment, just like the astrocytes and microglia do. But it is a think. We have not definitively been able to prove that yet. So there's a question mark on what exactly they do, which is why they're not included in the count. Schwann cells, they're also called neurolemocytes, but typically they're just referred to as Schwann cells. And that is the German pronunciation because the guy who discovered them was German, hence his last name, Schwann. Also, it's just fun to say. But they are going to act like the oligodendrocytes, only they're going to be in the peripheral nervous system. Now, unlike the oligodendrocytes, one oligodendrocyte can form multiple myelin sheaths for multiple nerves. A Schwann cell forms one myelin sheath on one axon, on one nerve. So one nerve can have many, many Schwann cells. So there's a lot more of them. But again, because they're forming this myelin sheath, they're going to be vital in transmitting signals down a nerve, but also in nerve regeneration. They're going to provide a protective mechanism so that our nerves can regenerate. Which means we do need to talk very briefly about nerve regeneration. Typically, we say that nerves do not regenerate. Once they die, they're done. Not quite true. It depends upon where the damage is, the type of damage, the severity of the damage. The other reason we say that is because the healing process for a nerve, if it can heal and regenerate, it's not 2 weeks. It's not 2 months. We're looking at years. So people with nerve cell damage can regain the nerve cell, the feeling and stuff, but it takes years. For this, I like to use my husband's foot. Actually, he severed the nerves in a work accident across the top of his foot. It was 6 years ago now, 7 years ago now, and he's just started in the past year regaining feeling in his foot, feeling other than pain, because that was definitely firing. But if I touch his toes now, he can actually feel me touching his toes. But it took 7 years, 6, 7 years. His control of his foot is still coming back. The rest of the sensations are still coming back. And it's been 6, 7 years. So just use that as an example for nerve cell regeneration. It's not instantaneous. If it's going to happen, it's going to take time. All right, here is our nerve. A nerve is going to be composed of a cell body known as a soma. It's going to have a axon hillock, which is going to be a bump. From that bump is going to be an axon. That axon is going to extend, to a another nerve or to whatever it's going to communicate with. And at the end of that axon, you're going to have synaptic terminals or synaptic knobs, depending on the textbook. These synaptic knobs are going to release not acetylcholine. They're going to release a neurotransmitter, which may be acetylcholine, to carry that transmission on. At the other end of the cell, the neuron, the other side of the cell body, I should say, we are going to have dendrites. Dendrites are going to take information that is coming into the neuron, carry it to the cell body, then it will send a transmission down the axon to the synaptic knobs to send that signal on. So dendrites are involved with incoming information. The axon and synaptic knobs are with outgoing information. That being said, we will dive into the nerve itself in the next audio.